Right now, coming ahead is exploration into the wild but informative and incredible world of the Daybell trial. The Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell case is beginning, and the first start of the juries being fully impaneled has gotten underway. And so we're going to be exploring that in some more in depth detail. I have a kind of interesting but not too long informative video to get you more up to speed on the kind of topics and issues surrounding the wild and very interesting world of the Daybell case. So look forward to that up next. And as always, continue to get these videos to the general public and spread the word. Thank you again. Daybell trial, April 2023. For the latest timeline of updated events in the trials and cases dealing with Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Rexburg, Idaho. In December of 2019, the world learned that two children, Joshua J.J. Vallow and his sister Tylee Ryan, were allegedly missing. Since then, a complicated story spanning multiple states and law enforcement agents has unfolded. Here is a timeline of events in the case going into trial. Pre-2019, Chad and Tammy Daybell married on March 9, 1990 in Manti, Utah, according to her obituary. The couple lived in Springville, Utah, where they founded the Spring Creek Book Company, they claim, through which Chad published many of his books. The couple had 5 children before they moved officially to their house in Salem, Idaho in 2015. Tammy Daybell at the time worked as a school librarian for education. In 2006, official marriage records are showing Lori Ryan married her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. Lori entered the marriage with her son Colby and Tylee, the daughter of her 3rd husband, Joseph Ryan Jr. Family members state that in 2014, Charles and Lori adopted Joshua J.J. Vallow. He is the biological grandson today of Charles and their sister Kay Woodcock, who was married to Larry Woodcock. Social media posts indicate that sometime in 2014, the Vallows moved to the island of Kauai in Hawaii. The couple operated a small business on the island, as indicated by business records. The family then moved back to the mainland between 2016 and 2017. While the Vallow family lived in Arizona, Tylee's father, Joseph Ryan, died on April 3rd of 2018. According to the copy of the official medical examine report, the cause of death was ruled as a heart attack. He was allegedly cremated, and little other information was available about his sudden death. Almost 1 year before the public announcement of the case, Chad and Lori Daybell make their first appearance together on the Preparing a People podcast. Time to Warrior Up is what the two claim to call it. They appeared with others on several of the podcasts, focused on the end of the world and end times theologies. They Preparing a People has since removed the podcast and publicly disassociated itself from the couple. The felony indictment indicates that on October 26th of 2018, Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell began discussing their religious beliefs to justify killing Tammy, JJ, and Tylee Ryan. The couple is believed to have met around this time at a religious conference in St. George, they claim. In 2019, Arizona body camera footage displays Charles Vallow pleading for Lori Daybell to receive mental health help at the community bridges on January 31st of that year. Officers determined she had a normal state of mind, they claimed, and she was medically cleared by Community Bridge. Charles Vallow files for divorce from Lori in February. He claims she views herself as a god preparing for the second coming of the Lord, according to court documents. Charles claims his wife would kill him if he got in her way to perform her mission. Divorce proceedings are later stopped after Charles Vallow claims he wants to make the marriage work elsewhere. The family states that Lori disappears off to Hawaii in February for 2 months and leaves the children with other relatives who are not disclosed. Around the time of June, Lori's niece Melanie Boudreau, and her husband Brandon Boudreau decide to get a divorce, as first reported by Fox 13 Salt Lake. Brandon claims Melanie affiliated herself with similar beliefs as her aunt and joined the cult right then. On July 11th, Lori's brother Alex Cox shoots and kills Charles Vallow. Alex states the shooting was in self-defense. However, it is unclear. By the end of August, Lori, Tylee, JJ, Alex, and Melanie move to Rexburg, Idaho. Days after Charles is killed, Chad Daybell sends multiple texts to Lori in what investigators call a romance novel of just ridiculous messages. Chad, who is still married to Tammy Daybell, describes in detail the relationship between James and Alina, the names he reportedly used only to substitute for himself and Lori. On September 8th, Tylee, JJ, Lori, and Alex visit the Yellowstone National Park near that zone of death area. Officials say this is the last time anyone sees Tylee alive, and the FBI asks for help for anyone who might have gone in the park. Chad signs an application with Tammy Daybell on September 8th to increase life insurance to maximum, and on September 9th, phone records place Alex on Chad's property in the area where investigators eventually find Tylee Ryan's remains. That same day, Chad Daybell texts Tammy Daybell saying he shot a raccoon and buried it in the cemetery. And then Lori enrolls J.J. Vallow at the Kennedy Elementary School of Rexburg, Idaho, where Principal Josh Wilson stays. Less than 3 weeks later, J.J. Vallow attends class for the last time, and his mother unenrolls him in the schools, saying he would be homeschooled. Tylee was never enrolled in any school in Idaho. On October 1st, Lori rents a 10x10 storage unit from Self Storage Plus of Rexburg, Idaho. Surveillance video at the facility, obtained by East Idaho News, shows Lori and the man visiting the unit 9 times in October and once in November of that year. Often the man, who appears to be Alex Cox, comes alone, allegedly. Another visit shows Alex and the man who appears to be Chad Daybell. During one visit, Chad and Lori visit the storage facility together. And on October 2nd, Brandon Boudreau returns from the gym to his Arizona home when he says he was allegedly shot with the bullet that missed his head by inches. Arizona Central reported the shooter was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow. That same day, Lori purchases a wedding ring on Amazon somewhere and is seen putting it on the finger at a beach wedding, allegedly in Hawaii. On October 9th, Tammy calls 911 and says a masked man shot at her in the driveway with a paintball pistol. She posts about the experience on Facebook, stating she has no idea who the person was or why they would shoot at her. Court documents later indicate Alex attempted to shoot and kill Tammy that day. And, these are interesting things, so I'm going to be covering some of that. I'm going to bring up some screenshots of Brandon Boudreau and see if there's some fascinating things we might notice in relationship to him and Alex Cox. Because it's very obvious something had been going on here, since the beginning. 10 days later, Chad says he called 911 and then states Tammy Daybell passed away at the Salem home. Detectives had visited the home and investigators ruled the death as a natural cause. The coroner doesn't ever perform an autopsy, so that's most likely proven untrue. The family holds a memorial service in Rexburg, Idaho, the following day. 2 weeks after Tammy's death, Chad and Lori are married in Hawaii on November 5th. They return to Rexburg, Idaho. Over the coming weeks, police state Chad Daybell told witnesses that Lori had no minor children to speak of. Police state that Lori told people Tylee Ryan had died many years earlier. On November 26th, the Rexburg, Idaho police contact and conduct a welfare check for J.J. Vallow at the request of his grandparents, Larry and Kay Woodcock. And they at present are trying to keep them out of the trial. So we're going to hear some issues on the motion. They want to bring the Woodcocks back into the trial so they can actually hear what happened to their to their grandkids. I think that that's a very appropriate response. They had not spoken with the boy in months. JJ is not at the townhome on Pioneer Road, and Lori tells police her son was with her friend, Melanie Gibb, in Arizona. Police determined that JJ was not with Melanie at the time. The next morning, November 27th, the Rexburg police serve a search warrant, and when the officers arrive, both of the Daybells had disappeared, they claim. Court documents indicate that on December 1st, Chad and Lori catch an American Airlines flight to Luhu, Hawaii. The children are not with their parents. And on December 6th, Melanie Gibb contacts the Rexburg police to say that Chad and Lori called her November 26th and asked her to lie about J.J. Vallow. As deputies investigate, the Fremont County Sheriff determines Tammy Daybell's death is ruled suspicious, and Tammy's body is exhumed on December 11th for an autopsy. Alex Cox dies in Gilbert, Arizona at age 51 on December 12th. In the police interview that are months coming after, Alex's wife, Zulema Patnos, spoke with officers and said a few days before Alex died, he told her that if anything happened, there was money allegedly hidden in a bag near the closet for some reason. On December 20th, the Rexburg police announced J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan are missing. They say their disappearance is linked to the suspicious death of Tammy Daybell, and Chad and Lori are moved to be persons of interest. On December 23rd, the attorney representing the Daybells, Sean Bartholic, releases statements calling the parents loving and devoted. And then on December 30th, the Rexburg police, of course, issue the press release stating they know where the children are because Lori and Chad Daybell had apparently murdered them, or they allegedly killed them and buried them in their property. Very, very tragic. And on January 25th, the Kauai Police Department serves Lori Vallow with a notice stating she must produce J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare within 5 days, as well as the police. But on January 30th, Lori misses the 5 p.m. deadline to produce them. Then on February 3rd, East Idaho News visits the storage unit and several other areas that were abandoned with their items, including bikes, scooters, a piece of winter clothing, a photo album and pictures of JJ and Tylee, and many pieces of sports equipment as well. There are also blankets that show photos of the children that are focused on J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan again. On February 20th, police in Kauai arrest Lori on a $5 million warrant out of Madison County. On February 26th, Lori waives extradition. Idaho authorities then extradite Lori Vallow from Hawaii to Rexburg, Idaho. So they went on the lam for a while, which to me, and I'm sure a lot of you, is proof they were guilty, that they were the original murderers of their own children, which is just, it's horrible beyond belief, to witness this and now going through the process for the justice that has to be delivered. On June 9th, Chad is taken into custody a mile from his home. He is booked into Fremont County Jail on felony charges. And the Lori Vallow was arrested shortly after. Chad makes his first appearance on June 10th. On June 29th, the prosecutors filed then official charges on Lori for 2 felony counts to commit destruction and alteration and concealment of the evidence. And then she pleads not guilty. Chad's preliminary hearing is held in Fremont County, and everyone comes out for that, and he pleads not guilty. And then Rob Wood, the attorney, files a motion September 1st asking to combine the cases for Chad and Lori, making it more efficient since he plans to present the evidence and witnesses to everyone at the court equally. Lori is arraigned in the district court where she pleads not guilty to 2 felony counts of conspiracy to commit destruction of evidence. And in the anniversary of Tammy Daybell's death, her parents and siblings announced the creation of the Tammy Douglas Daybell Foundation. And then on May 24th, finally, a grand jury indicts Chad and Lori on several felony charges, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder after they have recovered some of the bodies. And it contains additional information surrounding the homicide of Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. On June 8th, Lori is committed to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare for another psychiatric check. Chad pleads not guilty. On June 24th, an official grand jury in Arizona indicts Lori for conspiracy to commit murder in the death of former husband Charles Vallow. Prosecutors declined to press charges against Chad, saying that there was no likelihood of conviction yet. Prosecutors dropped the destruction and concealment of evidence charge, and prosecutors announced they will seek the death penalty against Chad, saying the nature and magnitude of the crimes warrant possibility of the highest punishment for this cult ritual murder. Following a change of venue hearing on October 5th, Judge Boyce rules the Daybell trial will be moved from Fremont County to Ada County. And in Chandler, Arizona, the police released their entire case file for the investigation into Charles Vallow's homicide. Boyce denies a request from John Pryor on March 21st to sever Chad's case from Lori's. So then they go through all of this, and then finally, eventually, the cases are severed. Because on March 2nd, District Judge Stephen Boyce then rules Lori and Chad Daybell's cases are severed, and there will be two separate trials after the new evidence is submitted regarding DNA. Boyce grants a motion from Lori's attorneys to take the death penalty off the table. For now, as a punishment for the client, the judge says the main reason is due to a large amount of evidence turned over late, and the team does not have more time to go through further trials on this case. So, very interesting, just how far this thing has gone, all the way along. Now we see that they're finally seating the official jurors for this case. So sound off in the comments below. What do you feel about the monstrous actions of Lori Vallow and how many deplorable actions that she's committed and what she's done? And also, how do you feel about Chad Daybell and what he has done and the horrors that he's meted out on so many people with kind of coming up with this whole idea of this cult, this very David Koresh inspired type of cult? Sound off in the comments below. It's always your insights and views we like to hear. Most of all, thank you. Yellowstone Zone of Death is what they call it. Theory. It's been circulating for years in regards to the search for the missing Idaho children in the Daybell murders, homicides. Both Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow were very much a part of whatever this interesting world is. And so this is going to be kind of an in-depth video, but it'll be fairly brief, because it's going to cover certain aspects of the trial that are going on right now, but also this interesting theory about the Yellowstone Zone of Death. So it won't be a very in-depth video for right now. And of course, there's a lot of things that are being examined in regards to Alex Cox and other key issues. So be certain to sound off in the comments below how you enjoy the presentation as we go through this. And it may be decided we'll do a video on specific issues of the Yellowstone Zone, and also the history of Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. It'll be around 1.5 to 2 hours long. It just depends, really on you guys and how you really enjoy this. But anyway, the detective said the last known sighting for Tylee Ryan, age 17, was during a family trip from Rexburg to Yellowstone National Park on September 8, 2019. According to detectives, the phone records determined that Tylee Ryan visited the park along with her uncle, Alex Cox, and her mother, Lori Vallow Daybell, as well as her younger brother, J.J. Vallow. Investigators have asked for the public's help in tracking down the group's whereabouts when they visit the park. Yellowstone National Park is known for its wildlife and geothermal features, but a remote area known as the Zone of Death is allegedly drawing a lot of speculation on social media. The area in question is the 50 square mile rectangle in Idaho that is in Yellowstone Park, said Brian Colt, the professor of law at Michigan State University. The only sort of development in Idaho is the Beckler Ranger Station. Current law, according to Colt, opens the door to the possibility of getting away with homicide in that particular area for some reason. If a crime is committed, then the jury has to be from the state of Idaho, and the district or District of Wyoming where the crime is committed has to be the area where they go for venue. So the jury would have to be from the zone in the park, and nobody that we are aware of lives there right now. He explained that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution requires that the federal criminal defendant have a jury of their peers from the state and district the crime is committed. According to Colt, another component is that the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction over crimes that occur in Yellowstone Park. Therefore, the state of Idaho cannot prosecute a crime. That means if a crime is committed against children in the area, a suspect could walk away at certain times by virtue of not having a jury that is active for the case. So if someone commits a crime there and had a right to a jury trial, if it was a major crime, then there's no way to prosecute it successfully. That's how they say this goes. Colt said it would also be difficult to transfer the case to another jurisdiction because the defendant would have to waive their Sixth Amendment right to trial and the incrimination, defense. There are also other charges that a defendant could be held accountable for in another jurisdiction, such as conspiracy or premeditation. So even if something happened in the Idaho portion of the park, they might still get them for something else in that area. They stated, the theory might not work or the courts would reject it and they would get convicted. Colt first wrote about the jurisdictional black hole in 2004. He said he delayed publication for a year because he wanted it to be fixed first. However, he stated Congress did not take action on that issue. A defendant could use it as a defense, and it might work in their favor. It probably wouldn't work in a trial court, however, but on appeal, I think there is a good chance it might actually work then. In a statement to KSL, the spokesperson Sandra Barker for Salt Lake could only confirm the pictures released of the group at Yellowstone came from an electronic media that was seized in the investigation. She declined to say where in the park they would be taken. According to the court records, a picture of Tylee Ryan at the park's entrance was recovered from the National Park Service, which is in Wyoming. The location is several miles from the Beckler Ranger Station, which leads to Yellowstone's Zone of Death. To me, it looked like they were not in the Idaho portion. It looked like they were near a geyser in the park. And actually, you can see thermal features in the Idaho portion for the rest of the park when looking at it up close. However, a closer look revealed that the Zone of Death is closer to Rexburg, Idaho, than the park's entrance. And according to court documents, the group traveled from Rexburg to the park during the trip. It's closer by maybe, 10 to 15 minutes because it's a bunch of back roads that are back there. So that's one point that they go into a lot. There's not that much in that area in way of being able to cross the summit, or really delve into that kind of marketplace because there's not that many roads. Everything back there is just alleged back roads, dirt paths, roads that are off the path. And so because of that, it's very difficult to say one way or the other, how you could chart it. But certainly, and we'll be looking at kind of in the trial a bit here, it is a big part of the Chad and Lori Daybell case because allegedly when they took this trip, there were members of this kind of Zion society, Daybell's cult, and really Lori Vallow's cult also, because it certainly is her cult as well, who would go to Yellowstone all the time. And that's never really been explained. We see some very strange things that have happened there sometimes with recent homicide cases. And certainly it's unsettling about everything that happened in relation to Salt Lake and Dylan Rounds. And sometimes, I have at least always pondered aloud if Dylan ever actually came across Yellowstone. It's just something I've thrown out there on occasion. I really doubt that park is just there, for the tourism. There's certainly a lot that can be said about the type of people that go there sometimes. So anyway, sound off in the comments. And if you have any questions or you have more insights on this, be sure to post them in that area down below. Thank you. Things have been quiet on the Daybell front, but there's some strange activities occurring around the edges. On March 31st, 2020, Brandon Boudreaux, who is alleged to have been shot and killed by Alex Cox, according to a lot of allegations out there, filed a lawsuit that alleges defamation. That suit just settled for $12 million. We need to identify a few people. Melanie Boudreaux Pulaski is the daughter of Lori's deceased older sister, Stacy, allegedly. Lori sometimes refers to Melanie as her daughter. Melanie divorced Brandon Boudreaux and married Ian Pulaski, or Pulaski. When Melanie left Brandon, she also left their 4 children at the same time. Brandon filed for and was granted a temporary custody of the children, and there has been a very heated custody dispute going on ever since. Robert Jarvis and Garrett Smith are the lawyers who were involved in representing Melanie Boudreaux in the custody dispute. Smith represented Lori's sister, Summer Shiflett, and Zulima Bastines, the wife of Lori's deceased brother, as well as Alex Cox himself. And that's interesting because Alex Cox is still being fingered a lot out there, especially now by reporters too, as the one who actually attempted to murder Brandon Boudreaux, or Boudreaux, yeah. Smith gave Lori's attorney, Mark Means, a copy of Rob Wood and Summer Shiflett's recording. He was called as a witness during the hearing on Lori Vallow Daybell's motion to disqualify Special Prosecutor Robert Wood. Now a little about the defamation. Defamation is a statement that injures a party's reputation. To prove defamation, you must have a false statement that claims to be fact. Publication of that statement in a very large press outlet. You have to print it in like a magazine, in other words. Intention or at least negligence. Damages or harm, proving that the statement is true and it is an absolute defense to defamation. Apparently, as part of the representation of Melanie, Smith and Jarvis issued press releases about the case. In one press release, they made some very nasty representations and presented them as fact. They published the statement by sending it out to news organizations and intended it to harm Brandon Boudreaux's reputation. Brandon is a sales professional and a devout member of the LDS faith. Representations in the news release stated that Brandon had a history of victimizing many women and used extreme and dark pornography effects to which he was addicted, engaged in homosexual activities, was engaged with his family in organized mafia laundering, and had, along with his family, covered up instances of child abuse, drug addiction, kidnapping, many counts of assault and killing, which were simply untrue. Clearly, those allegations had a detrimental effect on Brandon Boudreaux's business and personal reputation. Brandon sued Smith and Jarvis and their wives personally in court. Why add the wives who probably had nothing to do with anything? Because Arizona is a community property state, and Brandon's attorney wanted to avoid any chances that they would try and transfer assets to the spouse. The judgment does have a few caveats. In Arizona, judgments can be viewed for reasonableness. Since we don't know all the details of the settlement, it is hard to gauge what reasonableness might entail. Some of the awards could be categorized as punitive damages, designed to punish the defendants for their vindictiveness. The other provision is that the judgment may be paid in full or part by the lawyer's insurance carrier. In Arizona, lawyers get their malpractice insurance through private companies. This means Brandon may not get the full $12 million, but they still will get a large chunk of it. Still, Brandon will receive several $1,000,000 in compensation for the malicious smearing. Those of you who have seen the investigation discovery program Doomsday and the Missing Children, which featured on it Larry and Kay Woodcocks' testimonies, will remember that when Tylee, Ryan, and J.J. Vallow's bodies were recovered, the coroner required that J.J. Vallow be identified by a family member instead. Brandon drove straight into Phoenix, Arizona, and then to Rexburg, Idaho, and spared Kay and Larry by making the identification. Melanie and Brandon's children remain in his custody. So, a very interesting development. The trial has started. The cult mother is seen in the first sketch as jury selection continues with more and more jurors being seated for all the official case history. The trial of the mother is now underway, with Lori Vallow in court in Idaho, marking the latest development in a bizarre series of instances that spans many suspected murders, unexplained deaths, and even apocalyptic cult beliefs from the end times regarding the killing of zombies. Miss Lori Vallow is charged with the murders of her children, Tylee Ryan, age 16, and Joshua J.J. Vallow, age 7, who were last seen alive in September of 2019. The children's remains were discovered buried on the grounds of her new husband Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho, in June of 2020. Prosecutors state that Miss Vallow and Mr. Daybell conspired with her brother Alex Cox, who is now deceased, to kill the 3 victims so as to further their doomsday cult ideology and collect the victims' life insurance as well as benefits. The couple was due to stand trial together before the judge severed the cases last month. Jury selection began in Miss Vallow's trial on Monday morning. Separately, Miss Vallow faces charges in Arizona for the murder of her 4th husband, Mr. Charles Vallow. Jury selection begins in the Lori Vallow murder trial. Lori Vallow on trial for the murders of her own children. J.J. and Tylee Ryan's remains were found on the Daybell property 9 months after they disappeared officially. Vallow believed J.J. and Tylee had become zombies, they claimed. Tammy Daybell died age 49, 1 month after the children had vanished, and Lori Vallow was also charged with her ex-husband's murder. 3 jurors have been excused, with more being seated to create a more promising full panel. So this thing has really taken a lot of amazing twists. You know, this case, by the time we get into this here, it's going to be almost as huge as the Murdaugh case, as the Alex Murdaugh case. And that means we're going to see a number of jurors possibly get excused, more that have to be reasserted into the trial that are brought in, and maybe some jurors that are just outright fired, with others being replaced because they have to try just these 2 horrific, I would say, maniacs who are definitely on par with Murdaugh in a lot of respects. They had an enormous amount of money. Some say they had almost as much money squirreled away as Murdaugh actually had originally in his investment accounts. And, it's just unbelievable. Chad Daybell is a horrific, alleged first-degree cult leader, global cult leader, including with influence in the World Economic Forum and things like that, allegedly. And Lori Vallow Daybell is an absolute, nutcase who's also alleged to be a major cult leader of a huge amount of institutions and things dealing with the global bank and the Bank of Switzerland and things like that. I mean, it's not like she is Chad Daybell, but she's an incredible cult leader and alleged murderer of uh, her own kin, all of her children, in other words, and other people, like allegedly numerous husbands and whoever that she got involved with over the years. And, so I wouldn't be surprised if they seek the ultimate penalty in certain cases, like consecutive life sentence or even maybe a less severe type of death penalty, such as a injection style penalty finally. Maybe for both, who knows. The defense attorney, Jim Archibald, had questioned jurors on the presumption of the evidence that had been revealed and disclosed to the courts and the courthouse so far. The juror who works at the Ada County Courthouse stated that they would have no problem being impartial as they've not seen anyone working on the case they claimed. So far, 5 more jurors were excused, making it a total of 10, and a second panel of jurors questioned during voir dire. Jurors were asked, if you don't take the stand, you're probably guilty. And of course, they had influence. They certainly had influence with some of these global groups, but they were, each one of them, particularly Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell especially, and probably Melanie, but definitely Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, were just absolute maniacs. I mean, they thought themselves, according to some of the records that have been recovered in Hawaii, they actually thought themselves to be global leaders of a new religious order, a new religious type of church, kind of like the church that is allegedly tied to Douglas. I believe his name is Douglas in Idaho, that they uncovered in recent times. And they actually believed that this new type of church was going to bring about the end of the world. This is what they claim in some of the reports that directly lead out of Chad Daybell's book. So, and I wish that somebody was making that up, but it's absolutely the truth. This is exactly what they believed. And I'm going to be covering certain aspects of that book. I think it's a dangerous enough piece of paraphernalia that it deserves a study, and a video that kind of examines some of the belief systems and understandings that are really expressed in that book. One of the jurors is due to be excused for a Navy training exercise as well. Juror 365 is in the Navy Reserves and will be going off to her annual training next week. Wood asks if she can reschedule the whole trip. She states she would do that again, but her qualifying years toward retirement will be reduced. Lori Vallow's defense begins jury questioning. After the prosecution, Lori Vallow's defense attorney Jim Archibald began questioning for the entire jury and the selection of the jury. Under the questioning, it emerged that one of the jurors worked as a laundry technician at Ada County Jail, where Lori Vallow is being held for the official trial as it starts. The potential juror insisted that her job would not impact her ability to judge Miss Vallow in the trial impartially and fairly. An interest in the TV show CSI came up during the jury selection. Prosecutor Rachel Smith asked if any of the potential jurors had ever watched that show, that some people who followed the show allegedly claimed they were excited about some of the evidence. One juror said she had watched multiple seasons of that show. Would anything about this exposure cause her to evaluate state evidence in a different light? She asked, and she asked her. The juror said it would not, and that she could accept not knowing how an individual died as a condition of discovering the truth of everything that had happened and taken place here. One of the potential jurors revealed that she knows some of the individuals on the trial witness list. The female juror stated that she worked as an administrative assistant in the Idaho State Crime Lab, which has worked on the case. She said that one of the witnesses on the list had trained her on the job, while others she spoke with or had at least heard of through her work delivered outside ordinances. Despite this link, the jurors said she would assess their credibility like anyone else who took the witness stand. Lori Vallow's doomsday cult ideologies were hinted at during jury selection, actually. Jurors were asked if it would impact or make impartial their judgment of the religious beliefs of an individual giving testimony when they were markedly or drastically different to their own beliefs. None of the jurors stated that it would. Miss Vallow and Chad Daybell's doomsday end-time theologies sit at the center of the string of alleged murders and mystery deaths of many victims. Chad Daybell ran a publishing company that put out books about apocalyptic scenarios loosely based on theology from the LDS Church and similar groups. Lori Vallow followed his books, for some time before the pair finally met in person at the Religious Conference of Utah in October of 2018. The couple believed that people, including J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, were now zombies, and that the only way to get rid of them was for the zombies to be sacrificed. Prosecutor Rachel Smith questioned the jury pool about the meaning of conspiracy. She asked jurors if they could convict an individual for participating or precipitating in any type of planning of a crime, but not participating in the actual crime itself. One of the jurors initially stated no, but then said yes if that was what the court instructed. Jurors expressed alarm at learning cases involve child homicide. Two potential jurors have expressed much concern about the heart of the case, according to the Idaho News. It came when Mr. Wood cautioned that some of the evidence would be emotionally charged and extremely disturbing, as the case involves many child ritual homicide type of issues. A woman piped up to say she did not realize this case involved children, as she is a mother. Another man chimed in to say he would rather not see evidence about the brutality of the children's murder, including gruesome autopsy photos, but affirmed that he would be a fair and impartial juror if chosen for the panel, given his own past knowledge of family affairs as well. Prosecutor draws a laugh from the jury. Prosecutor Rob Wood is presenting his questions. He began by imploring the prospective jurors to answer with honesty and brutal honesty to ensure the trial is fair for Miss Vallow. He elicited a laugh by asking the group if they believe everything they see on the internet. Jurors acknowledge that some of what they've seen on the media is probably false, with Mr. Wood assuring that the court will only hear true and relevant evidence in the trial. At least two jurors were excused due to the time constraints after the judge said the trial will last 8 full weeks. When the pool was asked if they had any sort of bias in the case or reached a decision around whether Lori Vallow Daybell is innocent or guilty, none of the jurors had spoken up. None of the potential jurors stated that they had any type of relationship with or association to Miss Vallow or either of the legal teams. The judge has outlined the charges to the prospective jurors: 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell, 2 counts of grand theft in connection with Social Security benefits following the deaths of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Lori Vallow has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Jury selection is underway in Ada County Courthouse for Lori Vallow's triple murder. The court needs at least 18 jurors, 12 jurors, and 6 alternates in the case. Which individuals will take the stand to testify in the high-profile case? It remains unclear as of now after the witness list was sealed by a judge. Judge Stephen Boyce issued the ruling in order to preserve the rights and guaranteed human rights for the fairness of the doctrine for the trial. Moving forward, JJ's grandparents are expected to be called as witnesses, hence the legal wrangling between them and Lori Vallow all the way along. The murder trial of Lori Vallow is expected to go on for around 12 weeks, with jury selection starting today. Judge Stephen Boyce is planning to begin each day at 8:30 promptly and dismiss the jury at 3:30. Lunch breaks will be short to allow for shorter days. Almost 2,000 prospective jurors were summoned last week to get questionnaires for the trial. So this is the real stuff, folks. This is really something else. ICYMI Cult mother Lori Vallow Daybell will face trial separately from husband Chad Daybell. Cult mother Lori Vallow and her husband Chad Daybell will be tried separately for the alleged murders of the children and Mr. Daybell's former wife. The judges ruled. District Judge Stephen Boyce made the ruling on Thursday. The couple was previously being tried together on multiple counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit homicide in the deaths of Miss Lori Vallow's children, 7-year-old Joshua Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, as well as the death of Mr. Daybell's prior wife, Tammy Daybell. In February 2020, 5 months after the children were last seen alive, Lori Vallow was arrested in Hawaii on charges of child abandonment and desertion. Following her arrest, Chad Daybell was confronted by ABC journalists and asked if the children were safe, where he refused to say anything else. The trial of the Doomsday Cult couple has stalled for a few years, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic and many other issues of competency. Lori Vallow has been behind bars since January of 2020 when she was arrested in Hawaii and extradited to Idaho for failing to meet the court orders to present children to the authorities. The case was put on hold largely when Miss Vallow was found not mentally competent, and then they went back and forth with this for a while, and now finally we are here, folks. Miss Vallow's trial is set to begin on Monday in a court in Idaho where she faces life in prison for the murders of her children and other punishment, probably consecutive type of life sentence, for the demise of Tylee Ryan, age 16, and Joshua J.J. Vallow, age 7. Tylee and J.J. were last seen alive in September of 2019, with their remains found buried on the grounds of her new Doomsday Cult husband, the leader Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. Miss Vallow was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and grand theft in connection with the deaths of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and is charged with conspiracy to murder Mr. Daybell's first wife, Tammy Daybell. Wow, talk about a mouthful here, right? However, JJ's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, may no longer be able to attend the roughly 12-week trial due to a motion filed by Miss Vallow's defense, so they're going back and forth on that. Most likely they will be allowed to be in there, but not with any cameras, apparently. So this is an astonishing case and trial that's going to be taking place here. Lori Vallow had been following Chad's books for a long time before the pair finally met in person. Charles Vallow claimed in divorce documents that Miss Vallow believed she was the godlike figurehead chosen to carry out the 144,000 leadership of all their followers. Multiple friends cited in police reports say that the couple believed they could drive out evil spirits and seek revelations from beyond the spirit world. Miss Vallow even believed she could teleport between Arizona and Hawaii. Unbelievable stuff. The only way to then rid an individual of the zombies would be for them to all be destroyed. The so-called Doomsday Cult heiress and world leader, Lori Vallow Daybell, has finally offered up an alibi for the murders, claiming she was somewhere else when they were destroyed in her brother's apartment, and bizarrely adding that her husband and alleged co-conspirator Chad Daybell may or may not have been with her. Miss Vallow and cult leader Chad Daybell both pleaded their innocence of all charges in a dramatic case that spans a deeply disturbing pattern of suspected murders, unexplained deaths of people close to the couple, and bizarre cults where zombies are destroyed and killed. Now, for the first time, Miss Vallow has provided an alibi for the murders. Miss Vallow claims she was in her apartment in Rexburg, Idaho the whole time. Yeah, amazing. An alleged co-conspirator, Alex Cox, is now deceased. Alex Cox was found gasping for air on the bottom floor of the home he shared with Zulema Pastenas, who he had married 2 weeks earlier. The autopsy found he had a blood clot wedged in the arteries of his lungs. So unbelievable. Just really. And you have to wonder, because of how astonishing some of the books are that they were a part of, if the judge will do the same thing in this case. Is there potential, at least, for the judge to allow the jury, members of the jury pool, to visit the Daybell property? That's right there in Idaho, and be able to go there. We're going to go to that strip of land. I'll show you more about where certain things, appear to be buried in that area. But certainly, I don't think it would be any surprise if they did officially allow the jury, of 12 and 8 or more alleged alternates to finally visit this property because it's such an enormous estate and property where all of this horror took place. And you have to wonder, I'm going to be covering a few things on Alex Cox in here. Could there have been other victims of Alex Cox who we are just barely starting to discover that were associated with that property? And I advise you that that's very plausible because this is a cult, definitely a real cult. And it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of cult element gets displayed and starts to be fully investigated and vetted. In Hawaii, who have repeatedly spotted him and his notorious wife in recent weeks and sent tips back to the press on the same issues. Fox 13 spoke with witness Sharon Olson, who said, "I got up the nerve to ask Chad, wouldn't it be easy for Lori Vallow Daybell to get out of jail if she could just say where the kids are?" Olson stated. He answered, "Well, it's not that easy. It's a lot more complicated than that." Meanwhile, Larry Woodcock, the grandfather of J.J. Vallow, who has an autism spectrum disorder and whom Lori adopted, Woodcock also said that he reported that the last time he spoke with his grandson was during a brief FaceTime discussion August 10th, and that there are always two different Loris. The first Lori is the wonderful mother, and then the Lori of today is the Lori no one can even recognize, who is the actual superimposed cult leader of an outrageous global cult, is what's been found. This ominous tone reflects the strange, morbid chain of events that has accompanied the couple over the past 6 months. In October, Chad Daybell's prior wife, Tammy, died in her sleep due to what was first deemed to be natural causes, but was later found to be foul play. Fox 10 Phoenix reported that Rowe spoke to Chad's daughter with Tammy the day of her mother's demise, and the child expressed fear that her father remarries later on. The owner of Kauai Dreams Realty had also seen some of the emails. It reads, "We are interested in seeing the property. Would the owners be interested in leasing the property to a clean couple with no pets or children?" Meanwhile, the East Idaho News reported that Chad's niece, Melanie Pulaski, a.k.a. Melanie Gibb, has dismissed as false that her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreau, made claims that she knows the whereabouts of her aunt's missing children. Pulaski appeared at a Mesa, Arizona court for hearing at the rancorous custody battle against Brandon Boudreau. And Brandon Boudreau has also stated with his attorneys that he narrowly escaped an attack and sudden death on October 2nd, 2019, when he was shot at from a passing Jeep while driving home from the gym in Gilbert, Arizona. The assailant's car, it turned out, was registered to Lori's late husband, Charles Vallow, who was shot in July of 2019. Lori Vallow Daybell's brother, Alex Cox, pulled the trigger in that instance. In an act of self-defense, they claim, Cox would meet his own demise in December, and Brandon Boudreau, to this date, holds that Alex Cox tried to kill him in the drive-by shooting. So he's still claiming that it was Alex Cox conspiring with Melanie Gibb to murder him and murder other people. So this family, folks, has really had an interesting torrid history all the way along. I don't think anybody will argue with that. This is going to be one of the most soap opera heavy families I would hazard to say that we've seen in a very long time. But it's interesting, just really fascinating how all of this finally unfolded and all of the things, the pieces that came into play as well.
Madison County know who she is? I would imagine imagine so. They all have access to network television. They all watch TV for a great deal of their day. So I have no doubt they know who she is. That being said, we don't segregate people merely based on who they are. We want to make sure we take every safety precaution we can, but we want to make sure that we're not treating them any differently than another inmate. So we have to be fair and consistent across the board whenever we deal with anybody. We have several options as far as safety goes. We don't necessarily have to put somebody in a holding cell in isolation to make sure that they're safe. We can put them in a compartmented area. There's several different areas of the jail that are smaller.
Isaac, what is a typical day like for a female inmate there at the jail?
Female or male, the day is pretty much the same, and it's one of the biggest complaints of any inmate. Anybody who's been an inmate will tell you that the hardest thing is the monotony of it. But the routine equals safety. If we do the same thing every day, there's a consistency to it. So typically, we do a standing head count every morning at 7 a.m. They eat breakfast about 7:30 every morning. They eat lunch about 11:30. They do another head count at that point. They eat dinner about 5:30. They do another head count at that point. And then we do another head count when they lock down in their rooms at 11 p.m. And throughout that day, they're offered, they don't have to, but they're offered an hour of recreational time out in our rec yard where they can access the library and check out books. If it's a weekend, we offer religious services that they have access to. And that's pretty much how it repeats every day.
Does everybody have a roommate, a cellmate?
Not everybody. We do have different options, and a lot of those single bedrooms are designed for handicapped inmates with special needs. So, but we can utilize them for other needs as well. If it comes to safety and security, we can do that. But most people have a roommate.
What type of food is served in the jail?
Not to brag, but Madison County has the best jail food, definitely in the state. All of our food is homemade, so we don't ship in meals, we ship in ingredients. So it's cooked in our kitchen. We have a full-service kitchen. The inmates work in the kitchen, so we have a kitchen staff, and it's supervised and ran by a nutritionist, a dietitian, and she makes sure all the meals are well made, that they meet all the nutritional parameters that are needed, and the food is actually quite good. It's even eaten by the staff. So
I know when I was there several months ago, I smelled it, and it smelled pretty good.
Yeah, home baked bread, fresh fruits and vegetables, you name it.
How does visitation work?
Well, as far as like physical face-to-face visits, the only people that can do that for any inmate in our jail now are attorneys and clergy. Those are the only face-to-face visits we generally give. All the other visits are through the Telmate system, and that's a video visit, and it's done on a tablet that they have access to. So it's very much like what we're doing now. We offer an hour of visits per week to each inmate for free through the Telmate system. Telmate offers more than that. If an inmate wants to purchase more visiting time than that, they can do that. If someone wants to purchase visiting time for that inmate, they can do that. And they have access to that from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
And they can do that from anywhere in the world as long as you have
anywhere
an
in the world.
connection.
There's a downside for the inmates in that they don't have the physical face-to-face visit anymore, but there's an upside to it too, that they can do it anywhere. All you need is basically a computer or a smartphone or a tablet to accomplish that. They have the option to deny visits if someone rings through and wants to visit them and they don't want to talk to them or visit them. They don't have to. If they don't want to use their visiting time for that, they don't have to.
Yeah, a lot of inmates have denied my requests, sadly.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, I know. So, Isaac, what type of increased security will the public be seeing around the courthouse?
So they can expect to see extra staff on duty, and that's to protect her as well as the public, but also to facilitate any needs, because even though we have this high-profile case going on, we still want to serve the public. So if you have traffic tickets to take care of, or court fees, or whatever you might have the court need for the court for, we want to make sure that we're still serving the public that way. So you can expect extra staff. You'll notice some newly installed metal detectors in the courtroom, or not in the courtroom, in the courthouse. which we'll be running everybody through just as a safety precaution.
How many inmates can your jail hold total?
We can hold approximately 100 people. We don't generally get it up that high, just for comfort's sake, because the higher population, the more problems you run into as far as, people living together. So in general, it's typical to run in about the 80s, and that's about where we are right now, and that's what we'll continue to maintain. The state at large has a huge overcrowding problem, so we do hold for the state. We do hold for the marshals and the feds and everybody like that. So,
and
still serve those.
80, does that include men and women?
Correct.
Because
We can hold approximately 20 women, but because of the compartmented nature of the building, we can move that around a little bit.
I see.
So what's amazing is, they moved her around a huge amount in throughout this whole process, in the prison yard and in the jails. It's just been unbelievable. And I guess, folks, that it's going to be that way for this type of case. I mean, this is really an unheard of thing in, typical history. It's like we're talking about some of these people who are going to be brought in on trial, and they're going to be like, I woke up and I had been brainwashed and I don't remember what I was doing, and I was a part of this incredible global cult, and these are people who are going to get like a consecutive life sentence and so on. It's like they're going to, that's what I'm saying, they're going to actually be actively linked to this thing. And by the time it's over, we're going to be looking at the actual books that they wrote that are certainly connected to Chad Daybell's theology, that's for sure. He was like, I don't know what you call it, the leading author of the Zion, Zion pioneers, who's going to take over during the end times. Just imagine if you're someone like Brandon Boudreau's son, and you wake up and you're like, what? You can't even remember what's going on because you were inside this insane cult that's already been convicted, and now you're on trial, and you're like, no, I don't even remember what was going on at all. So, there's going to be people that'll be sent in probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times for competency hearings. Certainly a lot more than Lori was, because they're not, think about it. You're a part of some kind of global cult, organized religious cult and things like that, and all of a sudden you find out, you're a part of it all. You were murdered, your uncle, and these are the types of things we're going to deal with and end up seeing. So I'm just, I'm giving a forewarning here, folks. This whole Chad and Lori Daybell,
the fact that Lori doesn't want to wait. She doesn't want the case to be pushed back. She wants things to move forward.
Yeah, prosecutors didn't mind if the case was severed in the past. And Chad's lawyers and Chad and Lori's lawyers had been reluctant in the past to say let's sever the case, and then Chad's lawyers changed their tune. So this is interesting because there is some thought that having them on trial together lessens the idea that one of them might turn on the other one if they're standing together. So you can see why a defense attorney would want them to be together in trial. On the other hand, it makes you kind of wonder if there's another motive for Chad's lawyers wanting the trial to be wanting them to be separated and severed and not tried together. It is interesting that Lori's attorneys said, this is not our advice. They want time to digest this DNA. But Lori, who is the defendant, has the ultimate say-so. You're the client. You can decide. And she's saying, let's go forward. We don't know if it's actually going to start. I think it's safe. It's important to understand that that it's really the defense, it's the defendant's call on whether to waive a speedy trial. You know, we've all heard, if you're charged with a crime in the United States, you have a right to a speedy trial. It shouldn't drag on for years. But if the defendant waives that right, then sometimes their team can investigate leads and try to find something that might bring up some, reasonable questions about whether the defendant did it. So it's oftentimes in the defense's, in their favor to waive the right to a speedy trial. So here you've got Chad saying, we waive the right, we want to delay, we want to look at this, and Lori's saying, no, we want to go right to trial. What do you make of that?
I know it's kind of hard to with reason to think that Lori feels that they have a really strong case, and I think that she feels like she wants to move forward as quickly as possible. She feels like these the charges are not right, and it's interesting to note too, her attorney had actually asked the case to be dismissed based off of the fact that this has not been a speedy trial, and the judge weighed that and then pointed out the fact that there's been 2 mental competency issues and pauses in the case, and so and it is a death penalty case, so it's going to take some time as well. So it's there's a lot of factors in this, and it was interesting in court, the judge acknowledged that the prosecution turned over this DNA evidence pretty late in the game.
Mm-hmm. So you understand why, as you said, the judge would say, okay,
So, and, there's bombshells with the fact that they found some things that implicate the Daybells. But again, I was going to point out kind of what some of you have been saying all the way along. The discovery motions, meaning the motions for discovery and judgment of discovery, have not ever even been introduced yet. The full discovery motions have not come in. And that's the key element that has to be produced. It has to be put on the table. I don't understand why that hasn't occurred in this particular trial. I can tell you, 100% that there's absolutely no question that they did the crime. They committed these homicides, of course. Issue that I have presented before and some of the viewers have brought up is that maybe some of the DNA got mixed in, as we've seen with certain recent cases, in the Morphew case and so on, because someone else was there, like a literal firecracker, like Brandon Boudreaux, for example, or even Alex Cox at first. They're in that area where these terrible crimes take place, and their DNA as a result, because they just went off completely half-cocked, given that Brandon Boudreaux at the time was already acting, certainly, quite a bit off the wall, so to speak, quite a bit crazy, that they could have simply messed with the DNA on purpose, even by accident, by mixing that DNA in there, due to just being at the crime scene. So I've wondered the whole time, as others have brought up before as well, where is the final official motion for discovery? When can we see the actual discovery motion to see what was discovered underneath Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell's property? Because whatever it was that was discovered is not good. I can tell you that. But in certain cases, it may not be good for them, and in certain cases, it might actually be a bonus for them, because other members of the cult, and that's what it literally is, a cult in this regard now, would be implicated or would also be for some reason added into the fire. And this is again due to the fact it's taken them And I don't really understand it, even from that standpoint. Why didn't the defense file a full-on motion for discovery, right? But it's taken them in the prosecution and so on that long, it seems, in each of these areas, to get a full, entire, documented motion for discovery and claim placed into physical evidence in the case. And so that's something that I was going to bring up. It's a very important point. People have discussed before, But again, we always love to hear your insight and your personal views when it comes to key issues like this. So sound off in the comments down below. It certainly doesn't do them any favors, because it's showing more and more of, as they call, Lori Vallow's delusions. And also the delusions on the side of, I guess, everybody connected to Daybell, to Chad Daybell. But it also muddies the case at certain times too, because we've got these other people who are just completely unhinged, who are involved in this. I mean, who knows? Maybe one of the Boudreaux brothers actually went in there in the middle of the night when they were brainwashed or something and tried to move the body. We just don't know, and without the actual full-on unredacted motions for discovery, the full-on motion for discovery coming out, we can't possibly know that yet. Now that they got the jury actually fully seated and it's starting to be impaneled and enforced for selection, maybe those answers will start truly coming to the actual forefront. But certainly, all the way up into April, they've never produced an actual full-on motion for discovery. So, very fascinating. And I wonder about what the Charles Vallow report is going to show, really. Thank you. TV. This is Alex Cox.
West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to the place.
Come out this way, man.
Where I belong, West Virginia.
You know, no weapon? Come on out this way. I'm gonna have you have a seat right here on the curb. Yeah. 18 feet here. We got those gentlemen out. Have fire rolling. Shall we please burn it when you start this
Misty taste of moonshine, teardrops in my eye. Country roads take me home to the place.
And found Charles Vallow deceased on the floor. Unbelievable. And apparently Alex Cox had killed him. It's unbelievable. Newly released body cam shows the aftermath of a homicide connecting to the disturbing missing children case. Shortly after, Alex Cox fatally shot brother-in-law Charles Vallow. Vallow was the fourth husband of Lori Vallow. That woman's whereabouts publicly known, and the children Joshua J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan are considered missing. So, I mean, Alex Cox would just do that on his own? I mean, no. They're saying they got, he got the idea directly from Lori Vallow, his apparent sister-in-law or whatnot. It just is, it's bizarre. It's like a sister and the two brothers are all pointing their gun, at each other. Just unbelievable. There's no question. Not something to miss. Cox claimed that Charles Vallow struck him in the head or something. But really, according to what was recovered, looks like he just did away with it. And maybe in that case, Charles Vallow tried to hit him maybe with a bat or something after he was being shot at. But Cox definitely deliberately killed him. You could never, in a million years, make anything like this up. This interesting unfolding soap opera. So sound off in the comments below. Do you feel like there's something that we're missing about the demise of Charles Vallow? Do you think that Alex Cox possibly did deliberately try to kill Brandon Boudreaux and Melanie Gibb? Or that perhaps each of them, in fact, tried to knock each other off? Due to each of them being involved, allegedly, in the cult in some manner. We're always interested in hearing your views and your insights on this, most of all. Thank you. More to come. Affiliated with the Daybells and the Daybell group called the Church of Universal Triumphant, had thousands of followers and believed in the prophet, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, as the channel. Prophet told her followers that the world would end and moved to the church compound near the Yellowstone National Park. Now, this is someone Daybell really got into, especially Chad Daybell. Some small offshoots still exist in Montana, allegedly. With the disappearance of Doomsday Mother Lori Vallow Daybell's two children, curiosity about this culture has grown further. The Church of Universal Triumphant, founded in 1975 by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, used to be mainstream. Prophet's followers, who called her the Mother, were entranced by her hypnotizing personality. She told them that the only place to be safe was at a compound near the cult's headquarters, the former Malcolm Forbes Ranch in Gardiner, Montana. Ross, who has studied cults since the 1980s, is an expert witness on the subject. Ross recalled the late 1980s when individuals called him concerned about their loved ones who gave up everything to move to the property and worship Elizabeth Prophet, who alleged that Armageddon was coming soon and the primordial gods were returning. And most likely Chad Daybell was going to be among them, because he was a very big proponent of the Heaven's Gate cult, interestingly enough. They're alleging that Chad Daybell was a huge fan, actually, of the Heaven's Gate cult, which is no surprise, in that case. Other people spoke for her until her death. Eventually, the considerable assets were sold off and the organization has since disappeared, it seems. The numbers, though, are nothing of what they once were in Montana and the Yellowstone Park area. The fall of the Church in Universal Triumphant is far from the end of doomsday, but it is a sign of hope. The movement has seen a resurgence of interest after Lori Vallow, who is creating the Doomsday Network, preparing the people, have moved in, almost next door for a while. Rick Ross also commented on the issue. Still, like CUT, Ross has gotten calls from people concerned about their loved ones, many family members and others joining the Preparing the People group. Concerned people have told Ross that the followers are obsessively stockpiling food. There is also an ongoing investigation into the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, who was married to Lori Vallow's niece Melanie Gibb, allegedly as well. Well, honestly, though, Brandon Boudreaux is pretty out there now as well, so I don't know if we can count on any of them for sure. This is an interesting setup, but it's fascinating to see the CUT cult has essentially disintegrated, and much of its leadership have disbanded. They used to be big followers of David Koresh. It's also been spoken, before in the news and so forth. Gary Hagen, who was in Rexburg, declined to confirm any more of the reports. Yellowstone has been dealing with doomsday type of groups and end times prophecy theme congregations ever since it started. So this is nothing new, apparently, to Yellowstone. Thank you, as always. Updates on Charles Vallow has arrived. The newly released autopsy reveals that Charles Vallow died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds and ruled as a homicide. The report is the latest in the Arizona-based case that has captured national attention ever since. The Maricopa County Medical Examiner released the autopsy report on September 30th, which revealed that 62-year-old Charles Vallow had sustained several gunshot wounds to his chest and his stomach. And these were shot directly from Alex Cox's gun, interestingly enough. Vallow was the ex-husband of Lori Vallow Daybell, who, along with her husband, Chad Daybell, faced multiple charges in Idaho and Arizona, including murder and conspiracy for a string of deaths, as well as Charles Vallow himself. The charges are in connection to the deaths of the children, and the Daybell children in specific. Friends and family of both Lori and Chad said the pair are held in a cult-like religious belief system dealing with end-of-the-world theologies. Lori Vallow Daybell's brother, Alex Cox, is accused of shooting and killing Vallow after an argument at Chad Daybell's home in Chandler. Police stated Charles Vallow, the Texas resident, was visiting Lori Vallow Daybell at her home in Chandler Heights to pick up his son when the two began to argue into an explosive altercation. Cox, who was in the home, told police he interfered, fearing the fight would become very physical. Police took Cox and Lori Daybell in for questioning but released them. No criminal charges were filed right then. Lori Vallow Daybell is charged with conspiracy to commit murder in connection with the death of Vallow. Cox, who claimed it was self-defense, later had died of what police said was natural causes, apparently. Chad Daybell has pleaded not guilty, and the trial continues. So literally, Alex Cox, he was probably very, very gung-ho into the whole zombies thing, because he literally, out of nowhere, shot and killed Charles Vallow, and allegedly someone else too. I mean, and what are your feelings and insights on just this interesting case that has always had many strange twists and turns? Be sure to sound off in the comments below. It's your view. Apparently a lot in the past near the Yellowstone Park. They would go to the lake and they would go to some of the geyser areas. So very interesting. At a later time during the trial, I'll go over some of this in more real detail. But you can see this is a fascinating area. And they visited the area near Duck Lake in this place called Grant Village Compound and the Visitor Center. And even over here, if you go all the way out and you keep going, there's a place apparently called literally Delusion Lake out here. And I guess that signifies the namesake for some of the alleged cults and things that have always been in this area. But it's fascinating, And somewhere over there on the other side is that supposed, Yellowstone zone of death where some campgrounds and campouts occur that are very off the beaten path when it comes to this whole theology. But it's fascinating, They come out here and they would do a lot of interesting activities right there off of the geyser and the peak area for the Yellowstone Park. And some say that that right there in that particular spot is where no one saw any of the victims, including Tylee Ryan, ever again. So, always fascinating. And thank you for coming on this journey. Enjoy and continue to follow Chandler Heights, the Mesquite Grove Estates area. This is where Alex Cox was confirmed to have shot and killed Charles Vallow, amazingly enough. And, you know, I've really been looking into this for a while, but I want to hear what you guys personally say. What are your views and insights on this? Do you believe Brandon Boudreaux was possibly here in this area after or during the Charles Vallow murders? You know, given the absolute crazy behavior and sometimes crazy remarks of this family all the way along, do you believe it is possible that Melanie Gibb and yes, Brandon Boudreaux were somehow over here in this area during the attack on Charles Vallow, and they either attempted to shoot somebody perhaps, or maybe even tried to knock each other off? What are your feelings and insights on that? Sound off in the comments for certain, down below. We always appreciate your ideas, most of all. My insight on that is it's very likely somebody was over here, given that the pot really got stirred when Charles Vallow was murdered, and Alex Cox had gone to the extent of, you know, I guess knocking him out and knocking him off, and then Lori Vallow immediately got charged with conspiracy to take him out. So it felt like, I don't know, they think about, you know, the old style mafia times or movies like The Goodfellas. It felt like the rival families were literally coming. You know, forget the fact that there's this giant religious cult, which by every stretch, no matter who you speak to or any member of the jury who ultimately ends up having to talk about it third hand, you know, there's something bizarre going on there. But more than that, these family members are just always doing something to knock each other out. So I wonder, could that have been the case? Was Brandon Boudreaux over here? Very possibly. And I feel it is a strong possibility Brandon Boudreaux or one of his associates, or maybe a hitman who was, you know, working with them, was over here to stake out the property. Because, you know, killing Charles Vallow, regardless of what anybody would say about him, he was one of the very few in this family who was trying to regain a sense of a normalcy, as they call it. And maybe for that reason alone, he had to go first. Anyway, be sure to let us know. And there's always more to explore. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe.